So we've seen this move to the downside play out on ADA over the past 24 hours. And this is following on from my previous update where I mentioned I was tracking a WX Wastrager to the upside. And I set out the next key target to be within this range between 67.35 cents to 68.61 cents. And you can see that we ended up tapping into that region once we ended up reaching 67.6 cents. And yeah, since then, we've seen this move to the downside where we ended up losing the 50 EMA, which we found our support back over here and over here. And we ended up breaching past this level at 65.37 cents, signaling that we are bearish, given that we had a change of character. And so, yeah, as right now, I'm looking out for a WXY structure to play out. And what we could see from then on is either a recovery to the upside or a deeper move to the downside, where we could even breach below this level here at 59.23 cents. So if I bring in the fib tool and check to see what's taking place here, and bring this up to 67.07 cents. So what I am looking at for right now is for a WX4 structure, like so, and the Y wave would typically reach anywhere between 1 to 1.236, and you can see that we have exceeded the 1.236 level. And so if we continue to move to the downside and retrace towards the 1.600 level, that will then trigger a 5-hour structure, which could then mean that we are bearish. And so in essence, if we continue to move to the downside, the wave 3 as a minimum requirement will have to reach this level here at 63.52 cents. If we do so, then that could then signal that we are bearish, and this 5-hour structure could then form a wave W. And what we could see is a recovery to form the wave X, and then a deeper move to the downside where we could even breach below the local low at 59.23 cents. And so the next key region to be keeping an eye on would be the 50 to 88.2% retracement level. And reason being is because the corrector move to the downside usually retraces anywhere between 50 to 18.2%. And that region sits between 60.16 cents to 63.28 cents. So this region here. So if ADA was to find support within this region, that would then signal that what we are forming is a bigger WXY structure to the upside, like so. However, if we lose this region, then it's possible that we ended up topping off at 67.6 cents, and we see that deeper move to the downside where what we are forming is a bigger WXY structure to the downside. And as right now, I'm looking out for this corrector move to play out, and then we see a recovery to the upside where ADA could potentially reach anywhere between 50 to 18.2% of this move to the downside. And that region sits between 65.68 cents to 67.14 cents. And so we could potentially retest either the 50 EMA or the 200 EMA, and we get rejected. And then we could see a deep move to the downside where what we're forming is a WXY structure where we then trade within this region. And then I'll be looking out for that recovery to the upside where we then see a high play out and ADA breaches past this local top at 67.6 cents. However, like I said, if we continue to move to the downside, then that will then trigger a 5-hour structure, and what we're going to forming is a deeper move to the downside where we then breach below this level. And given that on a stochastic RSI we are within oversold conditions, I'm looking at for the bulls to regain that momentum and drive the price of ADA towards either this region or potentially the 50 EMA as a minimum requirement. And if I zoom out and go on the 8-hour chart, you can see that we are within the overbought conditions, and so the bears are regaining that momentum. And so, yeah, I will be anticipating ADA to potentially get rejected within this region, and then we see that deeper move to the downside where we then begin to trade within this region. However, if we fail to tap into this region, then it's possible that what we are forming is a deeper move to the downside where we then breach below this level. But of course, that's something I'm going to be tracking in the days and weeks to come, and I'll keep you guys updated. So yeah, that's just my update on Cardano and ADA. Hopefully you found it useful, and if you did, then feel free to hit the like button, and if you're new, feel free to subscribe. Take it easy, people. Peace.